I watch a lot of punters and a lot of punting, and one thing I like to do is analyze current draftable punters, and while analyzing them, I always have this sort of mental graph I keep in my head, comparing their potential to their production and then figuring out what's keeping them from closing that gap as my way to analyze how they're going to do at the next level. For instance, last year a punter I really liked was Ryan Stonehouse because I thought his potential and his production were very close, meaning he likely wouldn't have to change much and would only put up better numbers once he was in the league surrounded with a better ball, better coaching, and just all around better conditions. Then we have guys this year like Brad Robbins, whose potential is very high, but his production was medium to low compared to his potential, but good snaps, a better football than the Vapor Elite Thin, and a punt scheme that lets him just kick a pro-style ball like we saw in the Shrine Bowl would likely put him back in the high-performing elephant, meaning that he's just a shoo-in to be a great punter, which is why I thought so highly of him. Meanwhile, we also have guys like Ethan Evans, who performed pretty well for what it's worth coming out of D2, but he'll tell you, like I'm about to tell you, that he's nowhere near his potential when it comes to how strong he is, but he would have to do some tweaks to his form, like keep his drop a hair higher, maybe even a bit closer, work on striking up through the ball more and keeping his cool in big game time situations that call on him, and not just accept the fact that he can get bailed out by a massive mishit that he still has for him to close the gap on his potential and his production. So now we have a couple baseline graphs of what I'm sure will be some of the best punters in the NFL over the next couple years. So let's take a look at Michael Turks. Yeah, now, some may say I'm being harsh. I mean, he did have the third best gross average in the nation, coupled with a top level hang time and a top 5 net punt average, despite having twice as many touchbacks than anyone else in the top 10. But here's where you may have to rely on me, the punting guy, to tell you what you're not seeing with Mr. Turk. First off, you may ask yourself, Isaac, how did you come up with such a freakishly high potential for Mike? Well, it's simple, really. I just watched his tape. All of it. Not just his tape that he puts out either, but found clips from across the web, and the results are in. The dude can punt. The two that stand out to me are from the Colts camp he attended. He hit a 62 5.8 second hang time punt and a 72 5.68 hang time punt. Even for me, those numbers are so massive that they seem a little mind-boggling. I mean, for the first ball to travel 62 yards and have that massive of a hang time just literally does not feel possible. Many similar hang times are hit on the ball between 45 and 55 yards, and every yard you get further out and get the same amount of hang time requires that much more power to be put into the ball due to the angle it has to leave your foot to get there. This goes even more for his second punt, which breaks 70 yards in the air, which is already extremely hard to do on its own, as well as the enormous hang time that is just jaw-dropping, admittingly. I'm not sure we've ever seen punts that big recorded on film, but with Turk, those are just two balls amongst a sea of many others. And he's able to achieve this due to two things. First, his form is unique in the fact that he uses two types of swing paths simultaneously, where most kickers or punters use just one. Usually a punter has a very linear swing path. They let their hips stay towards their target and just swing straight up, which increases accuracy and consistency while getting them a pretty good amount of power. But it pretty much just relies on the primary muscles to do their thing, and it's a simple swing that requires just your left glute, left hamstring, right quad to do most of the work, as your left glute and left hamstring are pulling your hips through the ball while your right quad extends, allowing you to make some pretty explosive contact. Then you have a kicker swing path. It comes across more, and it is, for a lot of instances, way more powerful, but it's also harder to aim on a punt where your drop is flat instead of on the ground. A lot of punters have started to use a new type of punt called a hook punt, where you kind of misdirection and step right and swing back across your body to get significantly more powerful swings by tapping into that kicker swing path. But if you watch Turk's punts, he doesn't really fall into either one of these. His large extended backswing opens up his hips, but his follow through is largely still straight up and down, but as you see him falling out of his punt, his hips are facing to the left, showing that his momentum is still slightly coming around. This allows him to use all of the muscle groups that I previously described in one large kicking motion, which allows him to get much more power than your average punter. And you couple this with his very short, very explosive steps and his large mass of muscle, and you know that you're in for some very big punts. But if you want to know who else punts similar to this, look no further than Ryan Stonehouse. That's how this undersized, under 6 foot punter could keep up with the big 6'5" guys in the league. So now we know that with Turkish's new swing path and his freakish leg strength, you're not only going to get a big ball, but thanks to this entire year of case study that we had with Ryan Stonehouse, you know you're going to get a highly repeatable big ball. So Now you think it's time for the other shoe to drop. The, well, he has all this potential, but sort of statement. And I'll say this, no, the best going directional right. This comes from his style of punting and how he keeps his ball so straight that a lot of times when it comes to punting directionally right, he closes his hip to the ball and he'll either have a miss hit with pretty good direction or he'll send it down the alley with a really solid ball, but medium to below average placement in this direction. Also, there's this misconception that he's not very good at pooch punts, and I'll just say this, from the regular pooch punt area, aka from the 50 to the plus 40, he's actually as good as anybody I've seen. The area that I think he personally struggles with when it comes to mid to short fields is actually what I like to call the gray area, where it's not so intuitive where you hit, and that's from the 50-yard line to the minus 40 or minus 35, where it is just a little too far from the end zone for a traditional pooch punt, which is meant to take some distance off the ball, but also too close to just open up on a spiral or a 60-yard ball as well within his range. I've noticed he likes to try to hit the spiral as high as he can to force a fair catch in opposing territory, but that has resulted in some miss hits, and he's had some short returns from that area, as well as an occasional oopsie ball that lands 3 deep in the end zone. But that's all aside the point, because I don't think this hinders him too much. Here's what will surprise most people, I think, and it's that I think most of the things that have actually been keeping him from achieving his full potential were out of his control. So just hear me out. A, they switched to a new football this year. They switched to the Vapor Elite Thin, and I've told you guys a million times, it's a bad ball. I don't know how else to say it. No punter can come out and publicly blame the ball without looking like a jerk or a wimp, and quite frankly, no, it's smaller, it's thinner, it's harder to both handle and hit than a regular football, and QBs use it because they have small hands, and it 100% should be banned from college football. That being said, yeah, you're not going to just drop 5 yards in average overnight without something like that happening, and it's a big part of how he went from a 51.2 yard average last year to a 46.8 this year. It also just makes your miss hits worse because the hardness of the leather as well as the thinness of the point of the ball makes it so that your miss hit, which is a little bit higher on the ball, aka away from the fat part, is going to hit a harder and smaller part, giving that ball less give, so it's not going to have as much of a bounce. It just makes it absolutely worse, and it provides physically no boost when you get a good ball at all. In fact, some would even argue it makes your good balls less good, which I think is a little bit more of a mental factor than an actual factor, but it just does take a mental toll on punters as well. B, Oklahoma did a lot of shifting. In my opinion, it's just not a great way to start off a punt. Whatever advantage you think it gives you is likely not worth the inconsistencies it's going to bring to your punter by having him change his footing position before he punts. Your punter should be focusing on what type of ball he's going to hit and staying locked in, and not having to get in and out of his zone because you just changed what block or what direction you want to kick. This will not be as regularly called upon him to do on the NFL as it is here, but I thoroughly believe this is something that did not genuinely help his performance. C, they kept Turk a little bit too wide. With a man with as much leg as this, they kept moving him for whatever reason outside the hashes, narrowing his space and boxing him in. When you have a small leg precise punter, yeah, this is the right tactic. But when you have a big leg guy, sometimes you just have to move him closer to the middle of the field and give him as much room as possible to feel comfortable opening up on a ball. And that is exactly what a lot of NFL teams do. They offset their punters inside from the direction they want them to kick, so that way they have more room to do what they do best, which is blast the ball as far and as high as possible. So now everything that I've explained would all be potentially limiting to him. Let me tell you what really caused this video, because up until this point, or a couple weeks ago, for the most part, this would have all just been theories and smoke. But then the NFLPA Bowl happened. Turk got one gray area punt, which, like I previously mentioned, found its way a little bit too deep into the end zone. He had 2 pooch punts that, once again, did pretty good on, but then he did this. He had one attempt to hit an open field punt, and with it, he hit what would have been one of the top 5 longest punts in the NFL this year on the fly. And in this moment, I just realized what we had here, and it was all coming together. He does have everything that it takes to change the game in the NFL next season. I'm really excited to watch it, and this is nothing more than a warning to you all for what is about to come. And that is that in the NFL, things are going to get very, very hang time.